Aleister Black. WWE may have temporarily written Aleister Black out of their storylines last week. Last week's Monday Night Raw featured an angle where Murphy put Aleister Black's eye into the corner of the steel ring steps, as Seth Rollins had done a couple of times to Rey Mysterio. Aleister Black's eye didn't pop out, by the way, or a fake eyeball was not used, but Aleister Black was written out of the storylines. Black had actually come to the ring that week on Raw wearing a cast on his arm from the Monday prior, which saw Seth Rollins deliver a stomp on the arm to the outside. This was part of the creative plans, according to the Wrestling Observer Radio with Dave Meltzer. The original creative plans were for Rollins and Murphy to take Aleister Black out of action with an injury angle. It's not clear if this was the angle to put Aleister Black on the shelf or how long they planned to have him away. But it's interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting. At a time which, look, WWE's hurting when it comes to talent. You've got Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, all big names currently not really competing or not coming to the Performance Center due to various reasons. It's another star on Monday Night Raw you're putting on the shelf, but with no injury angles, you're putting on the shelf for creative reasons. That's very, very surprising given the current status of the company around, especially the ratings on Monday Night Raw. The angle last week with Aleister Black, Seth Rollins and Murphy featured Dominic Mysterio. Mysterio had taken a double team beatdown from Black and came to make the save, attacking with a kendo stick. It's since been announced that Dominic Mysterio will be challenging Seth Rollins to a match at SummerSlam. He made the challenge this week on Monday Night Raw, which Seth Rollins accepted. It's interesting because Aleister Black, on top of this, has been doing quite a few posts on social media and on Instagram, telling a story about his cruel father, ending with a message that he must now rewrite 4 years of his own history, which of course is about the amount of time that Aleister Black has been under contract with WWE. The final two posts included photos of a blank black square screen, easy for me to say, but the final post, the photo of Black, had showed him what appeared to be an injured eye. He also wrote last week, quote, "There is blood on my shoes and I understand I have to take accountability for this, but let me tell you a story." He then continued the story on the following Wednesday. "See, my father was a cruel man and he was cruel because his father was cruel to him. So I created a narrative that evil was a perspective as a means to not be like him," end quote. Then he followed on. He's been doing this storytelling pretty much throughout his Instagram. He followed on with the story. He said, quote, "And now I must rewrite 4 years of my own history by getting rid of that weakness. The same weakness that caused this betrayal. This is where my accountability ends and yours starts," end quote. So, as I mentioned, there's no update or word yet how long they want to keep Aleister Black off of television for, whether it's going to be for a few weeks, a few months. Who knows? He's obviously got to sell the eye injury. So Rey Mysterio, right? He was off television with that eye injury for at least a couple of months, really. It was after Money in the Bank, and he came back around, was it July time? So that's about 2 months from May to July. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. Now, Aleister Black is a fascinating concept to me in WWE, and I'll tell you why. He enjoyed fantastic amount of success in NXT. Former NXT champion, had just every takeover Aleister Black was involved in, he would have spectacular matches with Andrade, Johnny Gargano, Velveteen Dream, if you can even say the Velveteen Dream's name anymore. But every single match he would have in NXT was just spectacular. He was one of those stars that you saw him on the black and gold brand and you licked your lips as a fan because you went, man, when this guy goes to the main roster, he's going to make so much money because there's no way that Vince McMahon can't not like him, right? The gimmick is so unique and different. It's dark, it's gothic. He's got that great look of the tattoos and the hair. His entrance coming up from what looks like a coffin, even though they had to ruin that on the main roster by making the squeaky sound because he's coming out of a coffin, right? Do you get it? He's coming out of a coffin, a squeaky old coffin like in a horror movie. Give me a break. And then when he came to the main roster, which was at the start of 2019, he was part of that group that came to the main roster, and they had nothing to do for any of them. So that included the likes of EC3 and all of that sort of stuff. It went really well for them, didn't it? But he came to the main roster, and he was paired up with Ricochet, which at the time to me seemed really strange, considering that these were two guys that certainly weren't tag team guys in NXT. Their characters were just so different and so unique that putting them together, to me, made absolutely no sense. But these things happen. I was willing to give them a chance. As a tag team, I thought they did really well as a tag team. It just felt odd. It just didn't feel like a perfect fit. But then he split with him in April of 2019. And ever since then, has just done nothing. Nothing of real, meaningful or reason. For the longest time in 2019, he was sat in a dark room asking people to pick a fight. No one really did. I mean, he might have had a match with like Cesaro or someone like that. No one knocked on the door, and eventually he went, I'm going to get out of the door. Or someone knocked on the door. That was the funny thing. So he had a feud with Murphy, which was really good, and we'll touch on that in a second. But he had a short feud with Murphy, who did knock on his door, and the first few times that someone knocked on his door, he missed it. After sitting there for ages and, going, I want someone to pick a fight, someone knock on this door. I'm not going to leave this room till they pick a fight. No one did for ages, so he had to start picking fights of his own. And then eventually when someone did knock on the door, he didn't do anything. He was just so dumb, so dumb. That whole just pick a fight thing was just, it had the potential to be good, but it was just ruined, which how many times have we said that about WWE over the last couple of years? So as I mentioned, he did have a feud with Buddy Murphy beginning in November of 2019, and that was brief, but it was November, December, and sort of January, and it was really, really good. Their matches were great. Every match they had, I think they had one at TLC, and they had matches on Raw. Aleister Black won every single one of them, but it was a way to continue to get Aleister Black over, and if anything, it just did more for Murphy than it did for Aleister Black, because Murphy, after that, became a disciple of Seth Rollins, really put himself on the map, great matches, and Murphy was having great matches anyway. Think of that match he had against Roman Reigns last year on SmackDown, and it was just nice to see Aleister Black and Murphy doing something, and at the time, it was probably, the storyline and the feud and the matches that people were most looking forward to, saying, we're going to have Murphy, Aleister Black. Everyone was like, yes. But even that, they've run that into the ground to death. And after he had the feud with Murphy, and Murphy went off to become the disciple of the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins, Aleister Black, once again, didn't do much. He was in the background again. And then earlier this year, prior to WrestleMania, in sort of February time, we thought we were going to get a feud with AJ Styles, but that didn't really last that long. That was, again, just to help AJ Styles' feud with The Undertaker, and AJ Styles got the top of that one, which if you're going to feud against The Undertaker, you should defeat who you're feuding against prior to facing The Undertaker. You need to build AJ Styles up, right? But was Aleister Black the guy to do that? No, it wasn't the right choice. They should protect his character. And he just hasn't done anything on the main roster yet. He's been on the main roster now for over a year, and nothing. It feels like a big waste of time. And it appeared that Vince McMahon doesn't know what to do with him, and has halted Aleister Black, really. Fellow Sportskeeda brother Tom Collahu has reported that the Vince McMahon, the boss, feels that there's, quote, something missing about Aleister Black, end quote, comparing his situation with that of Cesaro. Which, of course, when people hear that and fans hear that, is quite worrying, because Cesaro's that guy for how many years has he been with WWE now? I think he made his main roster debut in like 2013, 2012, 7 or 8 years ago, and he's just, even today, he's still that guy of, WWE, they are just missing out on so much money with Cesaro, that he could be something so special. His feats of strength, his matches, his look, anything is just brilliant. And Vince McMahon just doesn't like him for whatever reason. He doesn't see something in him, whether it's, his accent or his inability, he thinks, to cut promos. And 7 or 8 years later, Cesaro ever winning a world championship in WWE, that's just not going to happen. It just isn't going to happen. He's a tag team wrestler in WWE now. He's won the tag team championships with a million different guys. Tyson Kidd, Shinsuke Nakamura, Sheamus, the list goes on. And that's just... That's Cesaro's role in WWE now, unfortunately, and therefore, when you hear those things that Vince McMahon isn't sure what to do with Aleister Black or can't put his finger on what's missing from Aleister Black. It worries me, and I think it worries a lot of fans, as it should, because I never understand those things. I just never understand those things. And Alex McCarthy from TalkSport also opened up on this. He said that Vince McMahon is actually a big fan of Aleister Black, but he does hold concerns. He said McMahon, quote, is a huge fan of the performer and of Tommy, size, agility, skill, but he is worried that the gimmick and the character will limit him, end quote. This just... when I heard that quote from Alex McCarthy, who is very reputable, so I'm not denying that this wasn't said, because I do believe him. I do believe the report. I think it holds a lot of credibility. But when I heard that, my head nearly exploded, because it's ridiculous. If that genuinely is the case, and as I mentioned, I have no reason to suggest that Alex McCarthy's wrong there. If Vince McMahon thinks that the Aleister Black gimmick will limit him, then what is Vince McMahon thinking? This is the same guy that made the Undertaker gimmick. He made Kane. He made The Fiend, or helped make The Fiend. And he thinks that because Aleister Black's a little bit dark and rises out of, meant to be like a coffin, that would limit him? Are you serious? This is the same guy who talks about putting smiles on people's faces. It's the same guy that made sports entertainment. Of course his character and gimmick might limit him, because that's the character. But you can make it work. You know, who would ever say that the Undertaker, the gimmick is that the guy is dead, right? The guy is dead, can never die. He's been buried alive, set on fire, whatever. You know, he's killed Paul Bearer a million times. That gimmick isn't going to limit him at all. And I'm not saying that Aleister Black is the Undertaker, but I thought the whole point is that he was going to be the sort of the modern day 2020 version of the Undertaker. Not to say that Aleister Black is going to be the Undertaker. I think he should be the first Aleister Black, not the second Undertaker. But the idea that he thinks that the Aleister Black gimmick can limit him is just farcical, absolute farcical. In the time in which the problem is in WWE is that all the characters are so samey. You know, they're all the same. They're all cookie cutter, and anything different actually does capture people's attention. Look at his work in NXT. In NXT, he was really over because he had great matches, but the character was something completely different, and fans liked it. And yet again, they go to the main roster and they have no idea what to do with him. No idea what to do with him. And it just proves this point that gimmicks, and we've seen this so many times now, and it's happening over and over and over again. And I think it's a reason why people are going to be hesitant to sign with WWE in the first place now. Because a couple of years ago, NXT had a great reputation in terms of the independent scene. People were like, right, I might not have previously got a chance with WWE. I can work the indies for 5-10 years. I can go to NXT, then I can go to WWE. And if I have success in NXT, I might get a chance on the main roster. Now, people know that's just not the case. That just isn't the case. What will really happen is you'll be on the independent scene for 5-10 years. Then you'll go to NXT, probably have some great success in NXT, make this character, it'll be great, it will get over, you can have great matches, great receptions, you can even become NXT champion. But once you get to the main roster, you are dead. You are dead in the water, you are done because you are starting from scratch over again. And it makes you wonder if NXT does actually work. Because gimmicks work in NXT and not on the main roster because they weren't made by Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon has to get his fingerprints on it. The creative team has to get their fingerprints on it. That would work in NXT, but it won't work over here. It's not, if it's in NXT, it's not Vince McMahon's character. It's Triple H's character. It's whoever's character. And Vince McMahon just doesn't care. He doesn't care. So it makes you wonder, does NXT really work? I thought the whole point of NXT, the Performance Center, all of that stuff, starting in 2012 and 2013, NXT was more than a developmental brand. It was getting characters, getting gimmicks, and getting wrestlers completely ready so that the transition from NXT to Raw and SmackDown was so smooth, it was completely seamless. And that just isn't the case. It doesn't work. Aleister Black, Ricochet, EC3, okay? It doesn't work. Sanity, the whole of Sanity, Eric Young, Nikki Cross is the one that's done the best there, and her character now is completely different to the Nikki Cross we saw in NXT. Bo Dallas, NXT champion. Neville, NXT champion, doesn't work. Sami Zayn, it took him to 2020 to actually win a singles title in WWE, or a title at all in WWE. And obviously there are exceptions to the rule. People will go, "Wow, so Seth Rollins." Well, first of all, Seth Rollins FCW. Same with Roman Reigns. Same with Dean Ambrose. I made this question the other day on social media. Who is the biggest star? Who is genuinely the biggest star that NXT have made in the Performance Center? Since 2013, since that Performance Center opened, who is the biggest star? And it's hard to name someone. It's really hard to name someone because people will say, "Oh, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose. They were in FCW." Maybe the biggest stars you probably have to say are the female stars, the Sasha Bankses and Becky Lynch. They're the biggest stars. In terms of male stars, nothing at all. Why? Because anything that's in NXT isn't Vince McMahon's creation. NXT might as well be the independent professional wrestling scene to Vince McMahon. Because if it wasn't made by him, he doesn't care for it. He really doesn't care for it. And Aleister Black is just another example, unfortunately. Now, do I think Aleister Black's going to come back dressed as Doink the Clown? I hope not. But, you saw the gimmicks that were being pitched for FTR before they left. Their revival, they were going to turn into the Fantastics, wear giant hats and wear clock rounds and like a mixture between Flavor Flav and Cat in the Hat. So if I was Aleister Black, I'd be worried. I'd be absolutely worried. Because you have no idea what gimmick that is going to be pitched to him next. And if Vince McMahon thinks there's something missing, that pretty much means he doesn't care. And if he will throw his hands up and go, "Well, I've tried everything. I've tried everything with Aleister Black. There is still something missing." And if that's the case, then there's two options for me. One, you send him back to NXT. He had great success there. If it's not working on Raw and SmackDown, for whatever reason you deem it's not working for him, send him back to NXT. At least he'll be successful there. At least he can have something to do there, right? Or two, if it's not working, let him go. And people will say, well, they're not going to let Aleister Black go, and they won't. But maybe it'll be up to Aleister Black to let that contract run down, because there are alternatives now. He can go to AEW. He can go to Impact. And I'm not going to be one of those people that just says, "Oh, he needs to leave. He needs to leave WWE, blah, blah, blah." If you're not being used right, though, you only get one career. So you got to make the most of it. It's the same with Ricochet at the moment. Do you really think Ricochet wants to be doing tag matches on Main Event? Nothing against Cedric Alexander, but this was a guy that was a huge star in NXT. They played to his strengths. They didn't have him do much talking because his promos are god-awful. But in the ring, he's tremendous. His matches were great. He can do all this flip stuff. It was great. Look at him now. He's in a tag team with Ricochet. He was doing jobs to Riddick Moss on Raw. He lost to Brock Lesnar in about 5 seconds at Super Showdown. He's done. Vince McMahon doesn't care for him. And again, because it was a gimmick that was made in NXT, had success in NXT, and he doesn't care. And that is the worry if you're Aleister Black now. Does NXT work? I don't know if it does anymore. It's ridiculous. I think the idea that they've promoted for a long, long time, NXT, it's a great system and it works. The facilities are great. The television program is great. But does its purpose that it was originally set for, does that work? I would say no. Because if you look at the stats, they're pretty damning. They are pretty damning. People will say, well, Bray Wyatt, he was an NXT guy. Was he really? He was an FCW guy and he started that gimmick in FCW before it came NXT. In terms of making big name singles main event male stars, NXT just hasn't done it for WWE in a long, long time. That's not to say that it's their fault, because it's not. They've thrown plenty of big names to the WWE main roster. Aleister Black, Andrade, Ricochet, EC3, whoever. They've thrown them out there, but it hasn't worked. You'd probably say the biggest name to come out of NXT is probably Kevin Owens in terms of a male star. Probably. And when did he debut on the main roster? 2014, 6 years ago? 2015, 5 years ago? It's pretty damning. It's pretty damning. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Aleister Black. People think he might come with a massive reinvention. Eventually, this will be my prediction, I think he'll just come back and he'll probably just be the same. He'll probably go after Murphy and Seth Rollins with the eye injury, and that'll just be the next chapter of the feud, because they'll keep him on the shelf for a while trying to come up with an idea, and they won't think of one, and then they'll just come back. You know, you hear in the stories and reports that there was chaos backstage at Monday Night Raw this past week when it came to taping 2 shows, and they were pretty much taping them on the fly because they just hadn't done the creative, which to me is inexcusable, because you're taping shows, 2 shows every 2 weeks, essentially. You should have some time to prepare. I know things aren't ideal with the circumstances at the moment. I know the testing and COVID and people having false tests and then positive tests and they're not being able to work for 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, you're the one that's putting on shows. You're a $1 billion publicly traded organization. Get it together. Get it together, WWE. And again, when I see these reports about Aleister Black, I just shake my head because it's just what a waste. It's just an absolute waste. So hopefully he will get success in the future, but it's pretty damning, isn't it? It's pretty damning. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Aleister Black? What are your thoughts on him being written off of WWE television? And what are your thoughts on Vince McMahon's opinion that there's just something missing when it comes to Aleister Black? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll be sure to respond and reply to all of your comments. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out on YouTube. Get up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos already. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. We're closing in on 700 subscribers on that long road to 1,000 subscribers, so if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. But if you have, just know that I appreciate it very, very much, and I'm incredibly grateful for your subscription. You can also follow us on our social media platforms. The handles are on the screen right now. The links are in the description box below. It's at 365 Wrestle on Twitter and at Wrestle News 365 on Facebook and Instagram. So be sure to give us a like or a follow there if you haven't already. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.